Hi, I'm Roy Collin, the host of the podcast. You can find everything about me by scanning the QR code there or going to roycollin.com, and you'll find my 6 podcasts: the Podfather, helping people become podcasters; the Awakening, exposing fraud and corruption but with solutions; the Crypto, all things blockchain technology; meditation podcast; speaking podcast; and the Learn Polish podcast. You can also help the show by actually making a donation, visiting the store, or helping my sponsors. I hope you enjoyed this week's show. Welcome to the Speaking Podcast. You'll find all our episodes on speakingpodcast.com. My guest today, former marketing VP, keynote speaker, business humorist, and consultant, Irishman Speaks. He went to the west, to Chicago, while I went east to Poland. Please welcome Conor Cunneen.
Hey, Roy, good to talk to you. Thanks for having me on.
No problem. And just for those that are watching on Spotify, BitChute, Rumble, or YouTube, you have a beautiful background. You might just tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, well, actually, I tell people, Roy, that it's amazing what you find when you're out walking the land. Camera right here in front of me. And my background, obviously, like yours, I'm from Ireland, but I'm based now in Chicago. And as I jokingly say, it's the way I actually put it, is my brand is Irishman Speaks. And I kind of go, oh, what? Well, you mean this side? Sorry, Irishman Speaks. Okay. So what I do, Roy, is having come to the States originally as a corporate VP marketing, I now work as a keynote speaker to improve people, performance, and productivity with a smile. And my promise for audiences is to leave them with a smile on the face, with a spring in the step, and memorable, actionable takeaways to keep on keeping on during what are challenging times.
Very good. So I suppose being the VP of marketing will help you with your own business. So what kind of things have you done with the marketing?
Right. Well, I think being VP of marketing, I think being VP of your own marketing business in one sense is a lot easier than being VP of a corporate entity. Because the company I work for, you're probably familiar with them, the Unilever, one of the core brands that I was responsible for was Hellmann's Mayonnaise, for instance, which is a huge brand here in the States, either Hellmann's or Best Food, or also in Europe. And trying to make sure that you've got good positioning for your brand is really critical. So what I say to people in business, particularly small business people, Roy, is that you've got to have a clear idea of what your positioning is. What is it that you want people to say about you or the service or the products that you provide when they're talking to their friends at the Starbucks or at the water cooler or something like that? So clear positioning and a clear message out of that is really critical, whether you're a small business or medium-sized business. When you're a large corporate entity, it's the brands that you got to have a clear positioning.
I think because a lot of speakers, they're just speakers, but you're kind of standing out with Irishman Speaks. You're using that as your marketing. And even with that video, I've seen you as well, where like you're coming up to the camera, you're bringing the humor to it, which is fantastic because people will actually remember you a lot.
Yeah. Well, you see, it goes back, I think, to differentiating yourself. Now, I jokingly say here that as a keynote speaker, I wanted to do keynote speaking when I came over here to the States. And this is what I said to my audiences. And I realized that I didn't tell my audiences that I actually come from New Jersey. And they kind of go, forget about it, really bad accent. And I said, what I realized was that here in the United States, people love the Irish brogue. So I said, I want to become a successful business speaker. I should have an Irish brogue, even though I'm from New Jersey, okay? Spoofing the audience. And believe it or not, I haven't actually got it here in front of me. I sometimes during my audience presentations, because as I say, I like to provide good business sense with some humor. I'd actually take out of my pocket a mouth spray that is branded Instant Irish Accent Mouth Spray. And I'll tell my audience that I take this Instant Irish Accent Mouth Spray every single morning. It gives me this lyrical brogue, and hence I can go with the brand Irishman Speaks. And what I try to do is I play to that a little bit, as I think the Irish are famous for good storytelling, for good humour in general. That's the kind of brand of Ireland. And I try to convey that on stage and leave the audience with the good takeaways as well that would help them to grow their business.
What's the sense of humor like in Chicago? Because that's one thing when I moved to Poland, it's the one thing I miss. It's the Irish sense of humour. Are you able to find it over there?
Hold on a minute. I'll bring my wife in, and she was telling you exactly the same thing. I think this is a cultural thing, probably for every single nationality, though. Your humor is based on your own national culture and the environment that you were raised in. And when you move to a different environment, it definitely is different. And the Irish, I think, because we are, what my wife says, Roy, is what she misses from Ireland is the crack. Okay? And of course, I can use that kind of phrasing, then you've probably used it as well. I mean, people kind of say, what? You mean there's crack in Ireland? Well, of course there is. But for your audience, and most people may not know it, but crack is the Irish word for fun or having a good time. So as I tell American audiences, that you won't believe the amount of crack you'd have down at the Paris priest house kind of thing. But so good humor and laughter, just the kind of funny insults or quips you could make to your friends, which Americans are astonished that you said that to your friend kind of thing, but it's just natural. And I think the sense of laughter, humor, and then the other thing that I miss, Roy, that drives me crazy is I miss having a well-poured pint of Guinness. Because even in Irish pubs here in the United States, now there's a few of them are very good, definitely, but 87.4%, what? Oh, it's 84.7% of Irish pubs cannot pour a pint properly here. Drives me crazy.
With the keynote, I mean, like, would just be obviously when you were doing VP of marketing, you would have done a lot of speaking. But the Conor in school, the Conor Young, and we just discovered prior to the recording we're both from the same county, which is in
yeah. That's right. Well, interestingly enough, I mean, I keep telling people, Roy, that this is always a journey. And I think if you want to succeed in life or in business, you got to be curious and you got to be continuously growing. So I just a slightly different avenue for a second. I do a lot of work here with people who are in job search. Now, it's not an income stream at all. It's just something I have a real passion for. And what I say to them is that if you're in job search and if you can go into an interview and show your potential employer that you're curious or that you're continually growing, you have a much better chance of differentiating yourself from other people that you're competing with. And it's the same with the business environment as well. I do think that you've got to be continuously growing. If you're in business, if you're not, and I'm not saying I know what the answer to this is, but if you're not exploring AI right now, you are going to be left behind by some of your competitors and new people coming into it. If you're not, I mean, you're using a broadcast medium right now, podcast that really didn't exist, let's say 15 years ago kind of thing. And what you're doing is you're using different vehicles to bring your message to the audience. And I think that's what you've got to keep doing. You've got to have a clear message and find ways to be able to broadcast that and communicate it to your audience.
And I had read about you volunteering to helping the unemployed. And I suppose with the craziness that's happened in the last few years, a lot of people were furlonged and they're kind of looking. Some people, they don't show their true selves. They panic at an interview. The nervousness kicks in. Have you any tips for people to stop that happening? Because sometimes the best people aren't tired.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, see, one of the things is that when you're going for a job, it's not necessarily the resume it's going to get you the job. It's your interaction and your chemistry with the recruiter and with the person that is asking you the questions. And if you're the best, let's say, technical engineer in the world, but you can't actually communicate that to your future employer, you're not going to get the job. So a few things I suggest to people, and this applies to sales calls as well, Roy, is that have a clear idea of what you want the person on the other end of the desk to say about you after you leave the room. So whether you're going for an interview or whether you're going for a sales call, which is basically an interview anyway, what is it you want that person to say about you after you have left the interview or after you've left the sales call? So basically, I mean, if you just take my particular example here, what I want people to be able to say after this interview with you, Roy, is that the guy was energizing, that he had good business sense, and he was humorous as well. Those are the kind of things that I want people to say. And if I know I want people to say those kind of things, either on this podcast or at the interview or at the sales call, I have a much better chance of making it happen. So when you're going for an interview, have a clear idea of what you want the interviewer to say about you when they're pushing you further up the line. Have good stories to illustrate those attributes. So let's say you want to be seen at the interview as being a good team worker. All right. It's not good enough to say you're a good team worker. Provide some short, succinct little anecdote that will showcase that in the last job and the job before that, you were seen as being a good team worker and appreciated by your co-workers and by your boss.
I know that you apply humor to everything you're doing, but I also heard you mentioning, even with sales calls, I presume even cold calling, having humor in that. I mean, it is a way of connecting, but how do you actually do that for those that wouldn't know?
Right. What I said to you, I've just launched a program called Adding Humor to Your Presentation, Roy. And the basic message of it is, one of the blog titles I'm going to do for it is, you don't have to be funny to be funny. And people say, what is he talking about? But basically what I'm saying is that you don't need to create humor. You just capture the humor around you. So almost certainly yesterday, Roy, you would have said something that made someone laugh. You probably don't recall exactly what that was.
Usually it's just showing my face,
Hey, you said it, my brother. But you don't necessarily recall what that was. Yet it made someone laugh. So what I say to people is, get your iPhone or get whatever the device that you have got to take notes. And when you say something that makes someone laugh, just put it into your device. So if that happened during a sales call, for instance, it's quite likely that the quip you made or the short little anecdote that you made will work at the next call or another call tomorrow kind of thing. And if over a period of time you capture the humor that is around you, then when you go into one call, and all you got to do, Roy, is just make them smile once or laugh once during the program or the sales call, and it is going to help you to connect better with your audience. You don't have to be a comic. You don't have to have them rolling the aisle, but laughter and a smile is one of the best ways of communicating with people. And you, as a salesperson or as a marketing person or as a business professional, you can do that.
I remember just from the Toastmasters that some people, I did loads of humor speeches, and I enjoyed, and I even saw with the competitions, even when people were going into the World Championships, even if it was supposed to be not the humorous speech, but there was always bringing humor into it, which was connecting with the audience. But there was people that were in the Toastmasters Club, and they said, I'm just not funny. And what you've just said previously, everybody can apply something to bring a bit of humor. You don't have to be constantly dropping, every 5 seconds to try to get a laugh. But I mean, even just through a speech, you can just say one or two little things that can bring humor. And but people tell themselves a story, I'm not funny.
Yeah, well, and that's where I say one of my blogs is going to be, you don't have to be funny to be funny. So it basically is capture the humor around you. I'll give you an example of one of the ones that I've started to use in the last couple of weeks. I speak to improve people, performance, and productivity with a smile. And literally every organization wants to improve people, performance, and productivity with a smile. I speak to some safety conferences, and basically what I say to the safety conferences or to manufacturing conferences where safety is a key issue, I say my definition of safety, and it's not one that I made up, I saw it somewhere, is that you come into work with 10 fingers and 10 toes and you leave with 10 fingers and 10 toes. But to do that, though, you have to have an awareness of what is happening around you. And you've got to be aware of the environment and your co-workers as well. So I tell a story that a couple of months ago, we went to collect our little darling granddaughter, Maggie, redheaded Irish colleen, from soccer practice. Her mom, Amy, had dropped her off there, so we were collecting her from soccer practice. We said hi to mom, my daughter, to Amy, my daughter, She went off in her car. We brought Maggie over to our car, put her into the back seat, the booster seat in the back, and my wife sits in with her as she normally does. And then I sit into the back seat as well. And Maggie realizes, Grampy, you shouldn't be there. You should be driving the car. And I say, but I want to sit with you. And she said, Grampy, as only a 60-year-old could do. So I start getting out of the car. One problem. We're on child lock. I cannot get out of the back seat. All right? So eventually, I could probably have crawled over, all right, but eventually we had to phone my daughter. She had to come back into the parking lot. And the other problem with that was my wife had just got a new car, so my daughter didn't recognize our car. So she was driving around the parking lot for a couple of seconds trying to find us, and eventually she opens the door. Now, what's the message there? The message for you, if I'm speaking to you at a safety conference, is what happened there was that I was not completely aware of my environment. And if you, in a manufacturing environment, are not aware of your environment, if you forget that something is on child lock or is on lock, you can get yourself into trouble. So that was just basically a simple example of something that happened to me just a few months ago that I've now been able to take, adapt it a little bit, and put it into almost any presentation that I'll be using to speak to manufacturing environments, to safety conferences or things like that. I didn't create the humor. I was just aware that we were all laughing at this. So I wrote it down and I said, when will I use it? And that's an example of capturing humor, not creating it. And things like that happen to you, that happen to your family, to your podcast audience, each of you. Write it down, write it down, write it down.
Oh, that's a brilliant example. So you were the Chicago Humorous Speaker of the Year.
You know what? No, what that sounded like there was, I was the Chicago Humorous Streaker of the Year. I want to clear
Probably that as well, I don't know.
Yeah. I was Chicago Humorous Speaker of the Year. And this actually, I got involved with Toastmasters around the time I was left Unilever. I mean, I was good at presentations, but I probably wasn't polished, which is maybe one of the reasons why some of my American audiences really like the presentations, because this kind of a goofball, that Irish guy was up there presenting. But I knew in order to go into the professional speaking environment and get good speaking engagements, I needed to do certain things. So I actually got involved with Toastmasters, Roy, you mentioned it. And I do think that if you get involved with the right Toastmasters Club, and I'm involved with Windy City Professional Speakers Toastmasters Club here still, if you get involved with the right Toastmasters Club, it can be an excellent speaker lab for you. But I competed a few times in the semifinals of the World Championship on behalf of Chicago. I won the Chicago Humorous Speaker of the Year. And that speech actually was on customer service, where it was customer service in San Quentin prison. So goofball kind of example of how you can take a concept and mess with it. And the lesson that just from the title there, Roy, is that it's a contrast. I mean, customer service you expect from Nordstrom or from Dell or maybe Microsoft. Well, maybe not Microsoft. But customer service in San Quentin prison is kind of such a total contrast. There's a humor to it.
Very good. With the President's Gold Medal then for the volunteer service, I know we talked about gel being the thing, but what exactly is that?
Yeah, that's actually an award I got from the President Obama administration. As I indicated, I do a lot of work with people in job search. When I left Unilever 17, 18 years ago, I come over as VP of Marketing with the company called Best Foods. We were acquired by Unilever, and after a couple of years, Unilever wanted me to go back to Europe. But I'd already messed up with my daughter, Amy's education by dragging her over here to the States when she's only 14 years of age. She just started in university at Wake Forest in North Carolina, and I didn't want to mess things up again. So I basically, as I say, I told Unilever to get stuffed. They told me to get stuffed, and we had a mutual stuffing, okay? But it was a kind of a good, it was an amicable exit. You can't have a slightly idiosyncratic Irishman telling the corporate organization how to manage their people, resources, etc. So left them, got involved with an outplacement company, and while I was figuring out what I wanted to do, kind of decided I didn't want to go back into corporate, I saw how, now I differentiated between job seekers and unemployment, okay? I saw how unemployment was sucking the life out of a lot of people. And I actually tell anyone who's in job search, you're not unemployed. In fact, I tell them bad the word unemployed from their vocabulary, because there's a huge difference between a person who believes they're unemployed and a person who believes that they're in job search. Unemployed, you're a victim. You feel like that. When you're in job search, you're proactive. You're kind of in control to a certain extent of your environment. So I saw what job search was doing to some of the execs that were laid off at that stage. I offered to do a short lunch and learn, brown bag lunch as we call it here, for the group that was at their placement organization, and just staying motivated. Did not expect anything to come out of it. I was asked to do it again the following week, and a couple of weeks after that again. Then I got involved with all the job search groups here, and I know that the material that I've got does help people to feel better and does help them to feel more confident and focused going into the interview. So I've been doing it for 15, 16 years, and someone in an organization I was involved with here in Chicago recommended me to the Obama administration for the Gold Medal for Volunteer Service, and we got a Gold Medal for Volunteer Service, which is basically a piece of paper, but hey, it's a Gold Medal for Volunteer Service. And I genuinely, it's one of the things I'm really proud of, that an Irish immigrant gets that here in the United States.
With like the presentation skills then that you've kind of learned, because I suppose things changed in the last few years. A lot of it had to be online, and even some of the keynoting would have switched to online. Like, I can see the background and I saw some of the stuff. Like, what lessons did you kind of learn to start improving as you were kind of going through that?
Well, I learned how to put on makeup. I borrowed my wife's makeup. I mean, one of the things
I'm worried about, you want to take that off.
One of the things that actually worries me, I can guarantee, if I'm doing a webinar for a professional client, I guarantee that I'll cut myself shaving that morning. So I have to regularly go to my wife and say, "We got something for this." But basically, what I try to do with the webinars is try and encourage as many people as possible to leave their cameras on, so I can get some kind of a reaction from them. That doesn't always happen, obviously. But what I do know is that when I'm doing my content, I've got a pretty good idea as to how people are going to react. So even if I've got all blank screens in front of me, I'm imagining what the audience is doing, how they're reacting. So if I say something that I know is funny because I've done it previously, I will then kind of pause for a couple of seconds, which is critical when you're doing a humorous piece, to let the audience react to it, etc. A few other things that I do is I try to get as much interaction as possible. So I'll ask for responses from time to time, tell people. And in doing webinars, I think, Roy, you've got to give people notice of what you're going to do. So I won't say, I want to ask you a question now. I give them the question. What I will say is, after I finish this comment here, I'm going to ask a question. So if you would unmute your microphone, we will see what kind of responses we get, etc. And if I'm looking for other reactions from them, I might actually say, so I might see you on the screen and I'll say, Roy, I'm going to ask you a question in a couple of seconds' time. I don't want to put you on the spot. I'll make whatever comment and then I'll come back to you. Another simple one is that if we've got a number of people on the webinar, let's say we've got 25 on the screen, another 25 on another screen, etc. I'll say, right, we're going to get some audience interaction here now. So the way we'll do this is let's ask Roy for a comment first, and then I'm going to go to you, Maria, and then I'll go to Peter, okay? So again, the less silence you've got in the webinar, the better. And one of the better ways of doing that is to try and make sure that you kind of give people a little bit of notice of what is going to happen. And the other thing then is I do all my webinars from out here in the country road kind of thing. I just walk over the cliff later on. And so it's just kind of reinforcing the brand again.
You mentioned that you give time for the laughter, and I know that when I was doing the Toastmasters competitions, like when you're in a club and there's 20, 30 people, it's grand, but I got into the final of 5 countries and it caught me because people are laughing a lot longer. And is that something that you noticed yourself? You wouldn't think that it could take nearly a minute off your speech, like, and especially when you've got a 5 to 7, like for me, I had to rush the end of it and I didn't do myself justice. And there was no way I was expecting the laughs to go on as long as they did.
Yeah, do you know, that's a really good point. And something that particularly at Toastmasters competitions really catches people, because what happens is that you're at, for me, people don't know what Toastmasters is. It's basically a non-profit organization where you may have a Toastmasters club at your local city or town, and people go there to improve their speaking skills. And that can be at any level you start. As I said, I'm involved with a professional speakers group here in the Chicagoland area. But Toastmasters has this humorous speech competition where you've got 7 minutes to tell a story, make people laugh, etc. And you do that story at your club where there might only be 7 people at the club, and you get a few kind of a hee kind of thing. And then you go to the next part of the competition, the next round, etc. There might be 17 people there, and you might say something funny, and it can be another hee. But what happens is, like what you say, Roy, is that when you go to a larger audience and you get a really good reaction, the laughter explodes. If you know how to work the audience, you leave them laugh. So that takes a lot of time out of your speech of 7 minutes at time that you have got. And you're not the first one that has had that issue. You won't be the last one, but it does go back to, you learn a lot from that, though. And the next time, if you do compete in a Toastmasters competition, you will appreciate that I don't need 7 minutes for a humorous speech, 7 minutes of content. I need about 5.5 minutes of content and allow the audience to laugh.
I know you've mentioned the laugh there. You've got the AcronYm L.A.U.G.H. You might let people know what that's about.
Well, right. Okay. So in this course on adding humor to your presentation, I believe in the power of the acronyms. I really think they are powerful. In fact, I've actually created an acronym for the word acronym, which stands for all content, remember, or names you mention, okay, or numbers you mention. But if you want people to remember things, as a professional speaker, I feel you've got to give them some things to hang on to. And jumping around the place for a second, my most popular keynote is titled The Gift of Gab, which is GAB. And GAB is an acronym for goals, attitude, and behavior. Goals, attitude, behavior. So if I was to say to an event planner, I speak about attitude and I speak about behavior and I speak about goals, he's not going to remember that. But if I say I speak about the gift of gab, which is goals, attitude, behavior, they have a reasonable chance of remembering that. Now, so let's go to this LA acronym. The basic idea here behind this is, I actually preface this, Roy, by saying, I'll ask you a question, okay? If I say something that I think is, I'm looking for a 5-letter word, okay? I say this to the audience, I'm looking for a 5-letter word. If I say something that I think is funny, what do I expect you to do? Laugh, okay? All right. I sometimes respond that, who said gold, which is a 5-letter word as well, okay, GROAN. But laugh is the acronym that I want to take you through. And this basically, it summarizes what we've been speaking about. The first element of the LAUGH acronym, and I do this in my program on adding humor to your presentation, and whether you're in sales or marketing, business presentations, or going for that interview, you can use some of these. First element of the LAUGH acronym is listen. Well, what did he say? He said, listen, all right? And basically, this goes back to what I was speaking about earlier. If you said something funny that made people laugh yesterday, listen to it. What was it? Write it down. If you see something funny or heard something funny that made you laugh yesterday, listen to it, write it down, and record it, okay? So the second element then of the LAUGH acronym after listen is anecdote. And I'll take A and U together. Anecdote and U is for uncomfortable. And some of the funniest, when you were down at the pub, or you're at a Starbucks, or but having just an informal conversation, some of the funniest reactions you will get are from you telling a story. People laugh more at anecdotes than they do at jokes. All right, the joke is designed to make you fun and make you laugh. But in general, though, over the course of a few days or weeks, you don't necessarily hear that many jokes, but you do have a smile on your face quite regularly. And a lot of the time it's generated by someone telling you a quick little anecdote or a story. And the funniest anecdotes are often the ones where something went slightly wrong. So, for instance, that in the story with my darling granddaughter Maggie, slightly wrong instance there, we're able to create some kind of humor about it. I have a video online, a few videos online about a situation where I had a little chat or discussion with one of Illinois' finest speed cops, okay, or cop car. And I've created a really humorous story there about choosing my attitude. What do I want my attitude to be? At the time when I was stopped by the cop, or when I saw the mobile discotheque lights behind me initially, I didn't, as I say, I tell people I came over 1-4 like a word. But Roy, as a good Cork man, you will know the word was oops, OOPS, which stands for please stop. Honestly, okay? Oops is a very powerful word for your audience, all right? So I tell that story, but so the anecdotes, something humorous that happened, often the best anecdotes are the ones where something was uncomfortable at the time, but when you're now talking to your friends or your colleagues at the pub or at the Starbucks or the water cooler, you're laughing at it because something went wrong, but it wasn't life-threatening. So listen, anecdote, uncomfortable. And here's the thing, the reason why I was able to develop that mobile discotheque story with the cop car pulling me aside for going through a red light is because I came home and told my wife something about it. And what actually happened was, what made it funny initially was, the reaction I got was, it happened on the 16th of March, okay, one day before St. Patrick's Day. So the cop comes up and he says to me, he's going to cite me for going through the red light, and that he was, I did another little incident, but he gave me a break on that one. But I said, how much is this going to cost me? And he said, $75, sir. And I said, $75? Have you any idea how many pints of Guinness I can get tomorrow for $75? Genuinely, that's what I said to him. He cracked up. I mean, with a good conversation, but it went back to, I asked myself, what do I want my attitude to be at the start of the incident, okay? That's the basic moral of the story. I come home and I tell my wife, and she says, you didn't say that to him. And I said, I did. She was breaking her sides laughing at it. And I realized, hey, listen, this is a good story. So then I was able to kind of embellish it a little bit, etc. On my website, IrishmanSpeaks, or on the YouTube channel, if you just look for mobile discotheque or when things go wrong on my Irishman Speaks YouTube channel, you'll see that story. But it's a great story, though, about choosing your attitude. And a powerful message, you can choose your attitude, but use humor to do it. So we'd listen. I listened to my wife's reaction when I told the uncomfortable anecdote about the cop story. G is for Google. And I tell people, Roy, that they should Google on the Bing for humor, okay? Now you Google on the AI, whatever you want to phrase it, okay? Goofball way of phrasing it. But if you're looking for if you're doing a business presentation on leadership, for instance, like that, and you want to bring a little bit of humor into it, why not Google something about humorous quotes about leadership, or humorous, let's say you're a financial analyst, you want to make fun of lawyers, okay? So humorous quotes about lawyers, a funny little anecdote about lawyers, etc. You can drop it into your presentation. You're not really plagiarizing anything there, and use that. So we're going to listen, anecdote, uncomfortable, part of the anecdote, Google on the Bing, as I say, and H goes back to comment you made earlier about audience reaction. H is for he to ho, ho, ho. Basic idea there is that once you get into the habit of spotting humor, so let's say in your next podcast, you say something that gets a smile from your co-host or from the guest. Just take note of it and say, all right, is there something, some way that I could change that phrasing a little bit so that I'd go from a he reaction to a ho, ho, ho. And that's the way a lot of the comics develop their material. They'll go doing open mic nights, etc. And they'll see what kind of reaction we get. And they'll say, all right, that's pretty good. Can I just change one word or do something slightly differently? And it'll make a difference to the audience reaction. So laugh, listen, anecdote, uncomfortable, Google, he, ho, ho, ho. So if you want to add humor to your presentation, this is the way I do it, my people.
Very good. And like you mentioned, you save it on your phone. Like I remember trying Evernote, just never worked with me. I just couldn't navigate it. So I kind of use Note. Have you got any kind of filing system on your phone or whatever way you do it that makes you find something relevant to the kind of speech or whatever you're doing?
What I do is I use Apple Notes, where I deliberately note this is not something I recommend. It's just my preference to do it. I do not find anything on it. Okay, I've got a document called Adding Humor. All right, and I just pop anything that happens into it on that, but I don't file it within that because I think I've got the kind of a creative enough mind that something I can see anywhere on it, I might be able to use at some stage, kind of thing. And I can also just scroll through, etc. I would probably add something maybe once a day to that Adding Humor file. And if you want, I can see whether I popped in yesterday or the day before in the second one we're chatting. But basically, what I suggest is that when you see something funny, listen to it and record it. You don't know when you're going to use it. But the next time you're making a speech or a presentation, just start flicking through some of those things and say, hey, I can actually use that little anecdote or I can use that line. That's why I suggest you do these kind of things. The other thing I do a lot of is when I see something on social media, I'll just take a quick screenshot of it and possibly use that presentations from time to time. I tend not to use PowerPoint at all, but if I'm using a program, if I'm doing a program actually on adding humor to your presentation, I do need to use PowerPoint all right to explain things more clearly. And some of the things might pop up will be just little tweets or comments I've seen online that I have saved. And if you are on the Twitter, as I call it, okay, or X, as Mr. Elon Musk would now like to call us, but if you're on Twitter or X, there's probably a few people that put a smile on your face. Why not follow them? One of the ones I love to follow is there's a lady called Sarcastic Mammy on it, okay? And I don't know what kind of relationships you're in, Roy, but anyone who's in a relationship here will appreciate this one. And I could be talking, let's say, to an audience about communication or understanding other people. I remember one of her comments she wrote was, I sent my husband to the supermarket to buy some groceries and I turned off my phone. He has to learn independence. Okay? So, I mean, again, I didn't create that. I just saw it, but I actually give her credit for it when I'm speaking about it. And if I'm speaking to a group of women in particular, they say, that's my husband. Okay? So, and then there's another one in terms of communication the other day that I saw was my wife said, you're not listening to me at all, are you? To which I thought, whoa, that's a funny way to start a conversation. So I mean, like, anyway, so and I can say, look, I saw this on Twitter. I saw this comment on Twitter, etc. But if you're in a relationship, everyone can actually relate to that kind of commentary as well. I didn't create it. I captured it. And if your listeners just once a day capture some little piece of humor, after 28 days, they've got 28 little pieces of humor. And you might only use 2 of them, sometime somewhere. But if you're doing sales calls and you put a smile on someone's face, you've got a much better chance of making that call and closing the deal.
Just finally, I mean, Irishman Speaks sounds like a good name for a book. Have you any book, or are you planning on writing a book on all your knowledge?
I'm a multiple author, and in fact, I'm a best-selling author. And in fact, by best-selling author, I mean one of my books is the best-selling book compared to the other four. All right. But yeah, I have written quite a number of books, quite honestly. One I've done on job search is staying sane, motivated, and productive in job search. And actually, I provide an acronym with 8 building blocks, which spells the acronym SHEET. We don't need to go into that, but it's 8 building blocks to staying sane, motivated, and productive in job search. I have written a book on For the Love of Being Irish, which is a book that provides limericks for each letter of the alphabet on the history of Ireland. So we'll say D is for Dublin, okay? And the limerick is beautifully illustrated by an illustrator here. D is for Dublin. The book, the limerick goes, its capital city is Dublin, where nothing is ever too troubling, where the beer isn't green, but it's great to be seen, and the people in Dublin are bubbling. Okay? So, and then I've written 2 books on Mark Twain. I'm a big Mark Twain fan. One of them is what Mark Twain can learn new about public speaking, and I'm working on an online program based around that, because Twain was actually an incredibly successful speaker. He traveled the globe, speaking from Australia, New Zealand, South Africa, India as well. And the other one is Mark Twain's book is titled Suppose You Were an Idiot, Mark Twain on Politics and Politicians. And Mark Twain was a really acerbic and insightful social and political commentator. He hated the graft and corruption that was going on. And everything he said 150 years ago is relevant to today. The reason for the book title, Roy, is Twain once said, suppose you were an idiot, suppose you were a congressman, but I repeat myself. And boy, is that still relevant today? You decide, but I think people might see him nodding your head. So that's basically it. Irishman Speaks. We're based out of Chicago, loving life here, loving going back to Ireland for the crack and for the pints of good Guinness, and really enjoy the chat today.
Thanks very much, Conor. You might just let them know the websites where we're and social media handles again that you.
Yeah, everything is basically Irishman Speaks, all one word. So on my website is Irishman Speaks, a YouTube channel, Irishman Speaks, all one word. Twitter, TikTok. I've started to go on TikTok, quite enjoying it. Instagram as well. And if you are interested in the adding humor to your presentation, you can either contact me at cc@irishmanspeaks.com, or I'm creating a new website. And this actually is I'm not sure whether this is a good marketing lesson, differentiating your communication. So I'm kind of showing by bad example what not to do. But I have created another website called The Improvement Academy, theimprovementacademy.com. And I'm putting my online programs on that one. So Irishman Speaks or The Improvement Academy. But it's been a blast speaking to a fellow Cork man. Yay, up the rebels.
Very much. I'll make sure, Conor, that I'll put the links both on the audio and the video, all the links of all your social media, TikTok and everything. So thank you very much.
Thanks a lot, Ryan. Cheers. Take care. Right.
That's all for the Speaking Podcast. You'll find all our episodes on speakingpodcast.com. Until next week, take care. So I hope you enjoyed this week's episode. As mentioned at the start, you can find my 6 podcasts on roycollin.com or scan the QR code if you're looking to start a podcast or do a podcasting tour, help with that. Also, if you're looking for a virtual assistant, we also have that service. And you can help the show by visiting the store, supporting our sponsors, or making a donation. Until next week, take care.